So basically, um, Nintendo's take is that no, Donkey Kong is just Donkey Kong across the board. Cranky Kong has always been Cranky Kong. He was never Donkey Kong. That's Nintendo's official stance. The people who made Mario Odyssey also made this game, and they are not saying whether this is the original Pauline or if this is Pauline's like daughter or granddaughter. Pauline does reference her grandmother a lot during this game. So the running fan theory is that this is like the original Pauline's granddaughter. But again, since Nintendo has not officially stated, we have no way of knowing for sure. Donkey Kong Country, you have Donkey Kong, the arcade games, right? The original throw in the barrel at Mario. Of course, that was not Mario. That was Jumpman, who eventually became Mario. It's supposed to be two different characters, but people kind of lumped them in. And over time, Jumpman just kind of became Mario, and it's all the same character and interconnected. Games like this in Nintendo's world don't typically have deep lore or deep backgrounds or running histories. They change stuff on the fly. Any character can be changed, any backstory can be changed to fit the narrative of whatever. Because the way Nintendo makes games is the story comes absolutely last. The mechanics and the ideas come first when it comes to Nintendo. That's how they make games. Sort of like people who do some people who write books or whatever. Definitely people who write scripts for movies. You start at the end and you work your way back, and that's a writer's trick to kind of really fill in the gaps. Nobody is really good at sitting down and saying once upon a time and then writing a whole book. You usually say, well, I have an idea about a spooky ghost man, and you flush him out and then you write all the story around him, which is why I've always been pissy about people who are obsessed with lore in video games, because it's not like you're reading novels that interconnect or watching a TV series that interconnects. Legend of Zelda has been the most annoying to me in that sense, because people were like, how do they all connect? What about timeline A and timeline B? And I think it's the dumbest fucking thing in the world. They are legends that are being told via word of mouth from generation to generation. They're going to change. They're going to be victim to the telephone game, just like IRL. That's how humans have passed down lore over, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Humans have told these stories, and that's where religion comes from. Oddly enough, you wonder how religion is so prominent in a world that obviously is where these things aren't real. And we have adults who think angels are real. We have adults who think magic and Harry Potter is real. And a lot of that is because the telephone game. We've told the same stories for thousands of years, you know. Because like everything in Christianity can be found in other religions thousands of years before Christianity was a thing. But modern people just don't understand. Religion has become a very divisive tool that can be used by the powerful and the elite and the ruling class to control society. So people are kind of susceptible this day and age to needing that connection. They need to take different stories, and they definitely feel the power and the urge to thread them together, because it's how we've evolved as a species. We feel that everything needs to be explained, everything needs to make sense, even though the reality of the world in which we live, nothing makes sense. Everything is random, everything is chaos. It's people's desire for to connect stuff has really ramped up times thousand. I'd say in the last decade, the Marvel movies were bad about that. People now expect when they go into the movies to have a cinematic universe. They expect there to be a post-credit scene. Well, there's nothing wrong with liking lore, but when you take something like Nintendo's properties, they're meant to be fairy tales. They don't need to connect into one another. You should be able to just sit down and play The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and it doesn't need to play into a grand overarching timeline of the entire Zelda franchise. Because you could go so far, you could really shit lord it. You know, you could say, well, Ocarina is just a story that was told by the people who live in the Twilight Princess universe. You could really get devious with it when it comes to storytelling. It's why no character can ever be truly dead. Anybody can just write a character back into existence, especially the more magical your universe is. Um, Again, we don't know if this is the original Pauline. We don't know if it's an alternate universe Donkey Kong. We don't know if it's her grandchild. You really can only go off what the original creators of content tell you. Um, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not all of everything I've just said for the last 10 minutes is not to shit on people who like lore. It's not to shit on people who like to deep dive or people who like interconnective stories. That's totally fine to have that stuff. What I'm more speaking about are the people who get online and like rave about it and pitch a titty fit and then try to cancel companies and creatives on Twitter or whatever because they didn't like the way a story went or a studio took a certain IP. That kind of toddler behavior is a detriment to creatives. When it comes to Mario, Miyamoto himself has said that over the years. You know, Mario is meant to be taken each title individually, and there's not necessarily an overarching story because you get a lot of inconsistencies as you go. Mario is supposed to be an Italian plumber, but he's clearly not running around our world, you know? And the original concept is, oh, well, he was a plumber. He went down a pipe. He went through some sort of wormhole that warped him into another reality. And that's how you get the Mushroom Kingdom, etc. But then you have games like the Mario and Luigi series, the RPG series, which say Mario and Luigi are star children who were born in that world. Then how are they Italian plumbers? You see, it gets to be really murky depending on who's writing the content and depending on which product you're consuming at the time. I didn't I read that the original concept for this game, Pauline, was just going to be an adult. They made her a kid, I guess, after development had begun. And again, that's hearsay I got off the internet. I can't back that up 110%. But I don't know. Mario also visited New Donk City. So the games are connected, the universes are connected, but you don't know if this came before Odyssey, after Odyssey. There's just really no way of knowing. And I think, because when I was a kid, I was really super bad about that too. I used to bitch and complain and moan. I used to spend hours online trying to connect the different threads of reality and the different video games. And thankfully, over the years, I kind of grew out of it. I started watching movie review channels on YouTube and I started to learn how to kind of just take the movie you're watching at the moment and just accept it without it needing to connect to a bunch of different, movies. It took me many years to get there. It took me really diving into like Red Letter Media's YouTube channel and learning to like analyze the product at hand. Um, but yeah, I think even if you hadn't asked, I wanted to get that all out there anyway because this is something I haven't really spoke on in depth, and my username online has always been Chozo Lore, and that might imply to people that I really super care about like the lore behind all the Metroid Prime stuff, and I do. I think it's really great lore, but at the end of the day, it honestly was just a username that I needed in the moment. I was trying. I think I was trying to make an Xbox gamer tag way back in the 2000s, and I couldn't come up with anything until I was like, "How about just Chozo Lore?" Because he knew how super duper into the Metroid Prime games I was, and I've been using that name now for like 20-ish years. Supposed to be born in San Francisco or whatever, but the stocks got messed up, or whatever. Ended up breaking him. See, you see the giant paragraph that you had to type out just to explain their origin story. That's kind of my case in point, you know. It's because there were a lot of people who said, well, there's so many mushrooms in Mario. He could just be cracked out in a ditch somewhere, high on shrooms, imagining all of this. So, you know, fan theories are fun, you know, but you don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt unless the person who made the media you're consuming comes forward and tells you. Of course, that doesn't always go well either. Um, there are take something like the Alien franchise, where yeah, the two first movies were really good, and then I personally didn't like the third one, and I personally didn't like any after that. Then you get into Prometheus and stuff like that. Then you get into all the Alien movies that have titles after them. The same for Halloween. I really like the original two Halloween movies. After that, four, five, and six really start to get just too stupid to watch. Um, but then H2O brought it back, but now I don't even really care for that. And then they brought back the last three Halloween movies that were made. They brought Jamie Lee Curtis back. Those are asking you to ignore all the Halloween movies ever made except the first one from 77 or 78. So sometimes, even though a creative might make an IP, they might either sell it, die, lose control of it. Many different things can happen, and what the original creator intended can skyrocket off in eight different directions too. And Miyamoto has been training new teams to take over. His retirement's not far away, and it's something that Tyler and I have been talking about at length in the past few years. Is a lot of the people who've been making all the entertainment that we grew up with are retiring because they had a good 20 or 30 years on us as it is in age. So they're reaching that retirement age where it's time to hang it up. That or they're just flat out dying from old age or whatever. So newer, younger people are coming in. They're taking over these franchises, your Star Treks, your Star Wars, and all these big, you know, multi-billion-dollar franchises. Your Disney's, your Mickey Mouse, your Warner Brothers, your Bugs Bunny, all that stuff. The original people are dead or no longer have control of it. You know, George Lucas sold it all to Disney. He no longer has any control of it. So IP is going to outlive us. And at the end of the day, you have to really ask yourself a personal question of like, how invested do I want to be into this? And that's why I took a step back. It's why I don't go to Reddit, forums, conventions. I don't dress up and do cosplay. Again, not that there's anything wrong with any of that. It's just that I want to sit down. I want to play through the game. I want to have fun with it. And then when the game is over, I want to put the controller down and then I want to go over here and do something completely unrelated to video games. I want to watch a TV show, maybe veg out and put a stream on of somebody else doing something unrelated. Who knows? But I did when I was younger get too invested into trying to connect every game and every movie and everything. And it just became an unmitigated nightmare headache. And I really learned to take each title for just stand alone, and I was able to enjoy them a lot more. Um, Metroid Prime 4 is coming up, and I don't know how many of the original staff from 2000 and 2001 is still around at Retro Studios to work on it. It could be entirely new people at this point. I don't know if it's going to suck. I don't know if it's going to be good. I just know that that's another issue that we have this day and age with media is that there's the memberberry issue where companies like try to sell you your childhood back to you. And then there's also the problem of our generation doesn't know how to let our childhood go. We are still buying and playing with toys that we played with 30 and 40 years ago. And I got that from Red Letter Media. It's something Rich Evans says. He's like, our generation just doesn't know how to let things go. You have 50-year-olds out here spending $200 on an unopened Star Wars figure. Let that speak for itself. So I guess at the end of the day, it's just about how you want to live your life. If you've got the disposable income and you want a whole house full of pop figures, knock yourself out. You're not hurting anybody. Unless you're like neglecting your children's needs to put all your money into toys, then yeah, you might need to snap back to reality. But that's not the majority of people at the end of the day. And it's one of those things, you know, because at my age, I've already been through this a few times where, you know, my friends and I are like, well, how many times are we going to play the same games? Because every Pokemon's the game, every Mario or every Pokemon's the same, every Mario's the same, every Sonic is the same. You're just playing the same stuff over and over and over, decade in, decade out. And the same thing can be said with visual media too. I grew up watching Bugs Bunny cartoons, obviously not new. Bugs Bunny is really predates my time, but they ran Looney Tunes when I was a kid on TV constantly. And, you know, even if I look at new Looney Tune stuff today, it's the same characters making the same jokes. And I think what they intend for you to do at the end of the day is they kind of intend for you to grow up with something, grow out of it and let it go, be an adult who just pays bills and that's it. And they want to kind of shift focus on the IP to the next generation, and the next generation will inherit that IP and do with it what they will. I tell you what really helped my head on all of this was if you think about everything like a play. Miyamoto said this. I don't know if he said this in the 90s or the 2000s, but if you go back and look at the Mario Brothers 3 on the regular Nintendo, there's hard shadows behind every character and every object on screen. And then even when you get to the end of the stage, there's a curtain and the game opens with a curtain coming up. So Miyamoto said the entirety of Super Mario Brothers 3 is like a stage play. Mario and all these characters are putting on a play. And I think that might get lost on some people who aren't paying really close attention to that game. Because Mario 2 was all the whole thing was a dream. And then Mario 1, I guess, is supposed to have actually happened in the Mario canon. So, if you take that logic of all of it being a dream, or not all of it being a dream, if everything being a stage play, and you apply that to every movie you watch, every game you play, and everything, you can enjoy that one title for what it is without having to connect it back to everything. Because sometimes you do run the risk of like putting in characters, enemies, bosses, music, stories, scenarios, just again for member berry's sake, and it ruins the story you're trying to tell at hand. Now that didn't happen here with Donkey Kong Bonanza, and I'm thankful for that. You spent the entire game chasing Void, and I had a sneaking suspicion there would be somebody else at the end of the game. Like I had a sneaking suspicion that they would bring back King K. Rool, and they did. And they did it in a way that wasn't obnoxious. But it's funny because Nintendo didn't even have the rights to those characters. Ain't that some shit? Ain't it funny how copyright works? Because Nintendo owns Donkey Kong, and I guess they got Diddy Kong in the divorce when Microsoft bought Rare. But Microsoft got Banjo Kazooie and Conker and all those characters, but Rare created King K. Rool and all the Kremlins. So when Nintendo made Donkey Kong Country Returns for the 3DS, King K. Rool and none of the enemies were there. They made up whole new enemies because they didn't have the rights to use those bad guys. Now, eventually it got sorted. Even King K. Rool made his way into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So eventually Nintendo did acquire the rights for all of that, that enemy and all those enemies. And I believe this is the first game to put those enemies back in because Tropical Freeze was a whole new set of bad guys. They weren't using King K. Rool and the Kremlins anymore. Now they are. And enough time has passed to where it's nice. It didn't feel that they shoehorned them in just because. It felt organic to the story. It gave me a rush of nostalgia. It was fun. And it didn't feel like I was just being beat over the head with that character. Like, ha ha ha, remember this character? Ha ha ha. It didn't feel that way in this game, which I greatly uh, appreciate. Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna cut this and put all of this in its own video because it's important. I feel because I've expressed a lot of opinions that could really stand to be their own video. But that's my thoughts on everything as far as lore is concerned and the best way to approach media. Um, it's fun to connect media to one another. It's nice when they keep a story going indefinitely without screwing it up. Some franchises have a little easier time with it. Even my favorite, film franchise, the Jurassic series, they kept the original three movies canon while soft rebooting it with Jurassic World. Um, so now they can just keep making those movies until they stop making money, and they'll still always have the original two canons without having to, you know. But it's, even though I don't like Star Wars, it's a real shame. It's a real shame that the new trilogy they made wasn't handled better, because you had infinite uh what's the word I'm looking for? Infinite potential. And it was so incredibly botched. So incredibly botched. They could have done so much with it. Because, like, at the end of the day, I don't hate Star Wars. I play it up and goof that I do. I don't hate it. I just really don't care for it. And I do find the fan base incredibly annoying. And I am annoyed that I can't look anywhere IRL without seeing something Star Wars. That does annoy me. But I don't hate the movies themselves. I think they're okay. Obviously, the original three from the 70s forward were the better, and then it was diminishing returns. But that's true of any franchise, video games notwithstanding. Sometimes a company just knows how to do something and do it right, like Nintendo. You've probably heard people speak about the Nintendo polish on their first party games, Pokemon notwithstanding. Donkey Kong, Metroid, Mario, those games are always going to be AAA games. You're never going to play a bad one. If you play a bad Mario game, it's either because you personally just weren't vibing with it, or you got some hang up that, subconscious hang up with it. No, there's no bad Mario games, no bad Donkey Kong games. Yeah, it's not a thing that exists. Again, personal preferences aside. But yeah, that's the short and tall of it. My thoughts on lore.